Steve, there's no deep state.
No.
Come on, Steve.
No.
There's no deep state.
What is the deep state?
Okay, so what do you think when you think about what World Economic Forum Klaus Schwab is doing and his campaign Build Back Better being the same campaign, identical word as Biden's? What do you think about when you see what some of these ESG guys are doing? You know, you got these, State Street, Vanguard, Larry Fink, BlackRock. They own all these stocks, and these 88% of S&P 500 top 3 shareholders is their institutional money. And they're imposing their power over these CEOs to do what they need to do for, And now recently they're stepping away from it.
Patrick Bet-David brought on this woke idiot onto the PBD Podcast and the Valuetainment YouTube channel that tried to tell Patrick Bet-David to his face that the deep state is not real and how much he hates Donald Trump. And of course, as anyone with common sense would, Patrick Bet-David absolutely unloaded on him for these ridiculous statements like Patrick Bet-David does best. Like I said, anybody would see this as a ridiculous statement, but very few people can actually do what Patrick Bet-David does right here and meticulously tear this guy's argument in half and all of his talking points to shreds. So let's go ahead and get into this clip here where Patrick Bet-David has to confront this woke idiot on the PBD Podcast and the Valuetainment YouTube channel. Let's check it out.
And either way, both sides, the American people get this. They completely intuitively understand it's all bullshit. Whether it's Menendez in the old country, Dianne Feinstein passed away right before we came on air. I was actually talking to someone about this yesterday, right? Like the notion, this person who's a legitimately important figure, right, in American political history for women, how she came to have the power, completely stripped of her dignity in the last 5 years of her service, that this is what she'll be remembered for, is sitting up there with no faculties, no personal agency. So we have a massive problem. You have a belligerence in the media that you see assert itself every time someone says, well, 80% of the country doesn't want Trump or Biden. So there's a lot of brokenness. I understand it. But the issue with Trump that's front and center, it has to be, are the intimations towards violence, towards chaos, and the assassination baiting of a guy who spent his entire career wearing the cloth of the
quick follow-up. It would seem to me your biggest issue would be people clinging to power. Let me explain. Trump first and foremost, but you named names. You named Dianne Feinstein clinging to power. She was clearly a vegetable, but she wouldn't step down. Bob Menendez, clearly corrupt, clinging to power, right? Mitch McConnell, 80 years old, can't even function, clinging to power. Your biggest fear is Donald Trump clinging to power. You used the George Washington example. He's not King George. He's not Julius Caesar. Go deep, go dark here for a second. He clings to power. Let's say he actually wins or even doesn't win this next election, but clings to power, assumes he wins. How dark could it possibly get? What's your biggest fear? There's
a plan. It's on the table by elements at the Claremont Institute that seek to really dissolve the functioning of the government, the deep state, as they call it, within 6 months. There is no deep state. There's dysfunction. There's bureaucracy.
Dude, I feel like this guy's struggling to even say that statement with a straight face. I mean, did you see how much he stuttered? You might even be able to see a smile if you go back and zoom in. He almost cracked a smile trying to say that. I'm smiling now saying this, after saying there is no deep state. Anytime anybody ever says this statement, you're just a massive, uninformed individual. And I'm throwing out everything you're saying after that, I'm throwing out anything you want to say, and I'm thinking you're an agent of the deep state. You have to be, right? Like, you're either an absolute idiot or you're an agent of the deep state. You're getting paid in some way to publicize this and to spread this message. There's just no way that any rational thinking, well-connected individual, whatever you want to say, can say that and mean that there is no deep state. Like, it just wouldn't happen. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, right? And it just doesn't make any sense. And look, we're at a point now where people have been saying that Donald Trump is a huge threat to democracy for so long, and there's all these reports about how Donald Trump is planning a way to capture a third term. And it's like, if they're gonna make up all this stuff anyway, they're gonna make up all this stuff. You might as well just do it and throw it in their face. I guess you might as well just go for it, because they're gonna say what they're gonna say, and they're gonna do it anyway, and they're gonna just prosecute you as if you're doing it anyway. And if you're getting all the negatives with all the positives, you might as well just collect the positives and go take a third term, right? I don't mind, I guess. I would just love for these reporters who are saying he's going to do it to come out and tell us what Donald Trump's evil plan is on the situation. So, because I'm not even sure how he's going to do it, but I'd love to hear from them, right? And I think you just go for it. They'll probably be fun. Let's get back into it, though.
Inefficiency.
Steve, there's no deep state.
No.
Come on, Steve.
No.
There's no deep state.
What is the deep state?
Okay, so what do you think when you think about what World Economic Forum Klaus Schwab is doing and his campaign Build Back Better being the same campaign, identical word as Biden's? What do you think about when you see what some of these ESG guys are doing? You got these, State Street, Vanguard, Larry Fink, BlackRock. They own all these stocks, and these 88% of S&P 500 top 3 shareholders is their institutional money. And they're imposing their power over these CEOs to do what they need to do for, And now recently they're stepping away from it. There's a lot of people today that I know when you're sitting here going through some of this stuff, and I want to listen to you because I want to know where your motive is. I want to know where your frustration lies. And, I want to comment on a few of these things and then, give a question back to you. You said Trump being, he was raised with a father with money. His father bailed him out, gave him money and all this other stuff, right? I saw kids who grew up poor, and I saw kids who grew up with money. The kids that grew up with money had more temptations to do stupid things than the kids who grew up poor. Now, what do I mean by this? They're spoiled brats. They're annoying. They're obnoxious. They're always getting bailed out. They never get suspended. If they do, the dad comes in and buys it out. You're not going to see a kid with a rich dad getting, what's the word, not suspended, when you're getting kicked out of school, expelled. It's just not going to happen, right? You're going to get these things. So the way I see it with Trump is, here's a guy that had access to all the drugs, anything he ever wanted to do. He had access to all the alcohol, anything he wanted to do. He had access to all of it. And you mean to tell me this guy never did drugs? He never did alcohol? And with all the temptations of the money that his dad had, he takes whatever the dad gave him, whether it's nothing, $1 million, or $14 million. I've heard all these 3 numbers, right? Even if it's the $14 million that his dad gave him, you take that $14 million and you turn it into $2 billion, $3 billion, whatever the number is. Democrats will say it's closer to $2 billion. Some will say it's $3 billion. Let's say $2 billion, okay? Do you do that? How many kids do that? Not a lot of them. It's not easy to do. So for me, I understand the establishment thing, and then to come to today when you said something about, this guy got up on stage and he said, the only way the election will be accurate is if I win, right? Not if I lose. If I lose, the election is a fraud and da-da-da-da. Okay, fine, cool. Then the hypocrisy comes out is if he only said it and that was the issue, okay, what are you doing? Can't be saying something like this. Do you know how many videos were taken down for repeating what Hillary Clinton said in 2016, that the election was rigged? You know how many videos were taken down? 0. YouTube didn't take down any videos that they said 2016 election was rigged and Russia collusion. 0 videos. They all stayed up. Why? So think about the voter who, you're like, this voter, right? This voter is kind of like,
I mean, that's great points by Patrick Bet-David, but I think an even better point would be what Zuckerberg, or I think it was Zuckerberg, said that, came out and said that he was being approached by the FBI or being approached by important agencies, some elites, as the owner of Meta or Facebook, and was being asked and told to censor certain stories. And they all leaned right wing. The Twitter files, there wasn't anything super massive that came out in those, but it just kind of confirmed things we already knew, and that they were also censoring the laptop story and other things, only skewing like white right wing data, censoring what made Joe Biden, that made the Democrats look bad so they could win the election. They wanted to make sure they looked good. Now, I don't know if that's, not the deep state at work, then I don't know what is, right? So like, I'm thinking that's definitely where the deep state was coming in. There's just so many signs of this. I could list them all off all day. You've heard them all before on this channel, but there's so many signs of the deep state at work. There's just so many signs. Patrick Bet-David does a great job of explaining to this guy. But I have a very strong feeling that no matter how much in plain English is laid out in front of this guy by Patrick Bet-David or anyone else, he's just never going to admit the fact that he believes in it, because he is benefiting from that, off the existence of it. And maybe I'm wrong. You can let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. I'm always around with that, but it just seems to be divided. Let's just get right back into it.
Okay, you want to do this? I don't like seeing people being taken advantage of. That voter is sitting there and saying, "I'm sorry, dude. I voted for," let's just say a person says that they voted for Hillary, okay? But she said the same thing Trump said. 3.5 years later, she funded it, and now we're supposed to sit there and say he's the bad character, not her? You want me to believe that? I think there's a big community as well. I guess what I want to bring back to you is, you know how typically it's like Republican versus Democrat? Okay, great. Then sometimes it's liberal policies versus conservative policies. Great. And then sometimes it's, anti-establishment versus establishment, right? And you said earlier when Trump was running, what Trump was able to do is bring public issues that nobody was talking about, the drug issue or the border issue. Nobody was thinking about that. Boom, he put it front and center. Oh, damn, this is really an issue, right? He made a non-talked about issue a talked about issue. Then we're all looking at us and this guy's right. Let's build a wall. No one ever talked about building a wall. Let's build a wall. Why shouldn't we build a wall? We never thought about this. We should do this.
Yeah, he's done a lot of things that in hindsight and retrospect just seem like easy, commonsensical things to do. I remember the night he got elected or day he got elected, the next day he released a video saying, we're going to do a celebration of America in Iowa, right? We're going to do this celebration of America, and it's going to be, you're going to have every single state represented here, and they're each going to have their own booth where you can enjoy the cultures from each state. Every single state will have an opportunity to be there, and it's just going to be a general celebration of America. It's like, dude, that's so genius. It's so much common sense, but almost, no one thinks that except for Donald Trump. Donald Trump only thought to do that. But then there's the wall and the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America, the little petty things like that. But it just kind of makes you smile if you're an American who actually likes living in America, which, if we're being real here, everybody should. If you're well-traveled, you know how very lucky you are to be born here and be a citizen here and not have to die thinking of trying to get here nonstop. And I'm proud to be American. As much as, the meaningless change to Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, it's just like, cool, man. Let's just roll with it. Let me know what you all think in the comment section below about this stuff. I'm proud to be from here. I'm imagining there's some of you that are watching this that are also proud to be from here. And I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.